Good day, everyone. My name is Mark Cabrera, and we're here to talk about finding confidence, particularly in real estate and also in your life and how it can apply. So, we'll be talking today about how to connect the dots. We're going to be asking these questions and try to find the answer for each of these questions that we have. So, the questions are: what is confidence? When does confidence become cockiness? Why do we need confidence in our real estate career? Where does our confidence come from? In which environment do we need confidence? In which circumstances? What are the key elements needed to acquire confidence? How do we gain our confidence? This is actually one of the most important areas that I'm going to discuss with you guys, because at the end of the day, what you're really selling to people is their confidence, to have confidence in you. So it always begins with your confidence, and with that in mind, people will be confident about you. We reflect how we feel to others, and that's normal. And how do we maintain this confidence? And the 5 elements needed to be confident. So these are what we're going to be discussing today. And I do appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this, because even one information that you get out of this, I truly hope it'll make a big difference in your career or in your business. So what is confidence? Well, confidence is your thought process of being able to have certain beliefs that certain things will happen because you can make it happen. The biggest problem a lot of people have, and the reason why they don't sell houses in real estate, is exactly this. And it's a good conversation, and it's a good way for you to try to look into exactly how you can gain confidence in yourself. The reason why you have a certain amount of confidence, and all of us have our own levels of confidence in our lives. I tend to not want to compare your confidence with the next person. It's just, to me, your confidence is benchmarked based on who you are right now and how you can improve, or how you improved in the past, or how you can improve in the future. But this is what sells. At the end of the day, if you cannot sell anything and you're confident enough that you're going to make something happen for a client, they're going to follow you just by having the belief that you can make it happen because you believe it yourself. So when people come into this business, a lot of the times, people look at this business and say, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. Well, to me, giving it a try is not good enough. To me, if you're going to get into a career of full-time, make the most out of it, make the most income. So my first few years in this business, for the first 4 years, I'm sure some of you guys already heard, I made 1 transaction a year if I was lucky. I was getting ready to quit because the expenses are more than what I was earning. And at the end of the day, there's no reason for me to continue. And what I realized is the difference between how I was the first year in the business and how I became when somebody showed me how the business is run properly. When someone shows you, you start to gain your confidence that you can do it yourself. And then when you start producing results and you start selling houses and listing properties, then you know the whole terrain. It's like going to a place, a town that you're not familiar with. You come in there and you've never seen the town before and you have no maps, right? You're not confident where you're going to end up. But what if you have everything planned out, right? So part of the confidence that you gain is through preparation, is through planning, is through making sure that your plan is executed. This is how confidence works. It's a gauge between where you were and where you are today. So if you haven't been selling a lot of houses, you need to look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what? What's going on? I love the person that I see. The only question is, where am I taking this person in front of me in the mirror? There's the one part of it, you say, I don't know if I can make it in this business because there's bills coming in and I have no clients. Believe me, all of us have been there. I've been there. I've been there even in the best years that I've had in my career, and all of a sudden my bills are higher than what my income was, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through that? But confidence is what is the difference between a Michael Jordan and an average basketball player. They have all the skills, but do you have the right attitude? And confidence, I would say, is in the top 3 elements of what type of attitude you need to have in this business. The other part is breaking through the limiting beliefs, because we're always been told a certain way, a certain thing we can do. I mean, as a matter of fact, the last person that fired me from a job told me I will never make more than $100,000 or $75,000 a year. And I looked at him and I was so confident. I said to him, you know what? I don't need this job. And I walked out. At the time, my wife at the time was 9 months pregnant. And we owed $60,000 in student loans and other credit cards. And I couldn't afford to actually be without a job. But the confidence within myself that I believe that I can actually do much better is maybe the enemy of myself on that day, because probably that was the worst decision I ever made for that day or for that week or for that month. But definitely that was a turning point in my career that shifted everything to be able to do better. And between that time and today, I've made so much income in this business that most people tell me, how do you do this? And to be honest with you, it's a broken down process, but the one element that you really have to have is a confidence within yourself that you can do it. So one of the things that I do is I always reaffirm myself, saying to myself, this is going to happen. I can make it happen. The less doubt you have, the more success you'll get. It's natural. When does confidence become cockiness? Confidence becomes cockiness when your insecurities become your crutch. When you talk about the things that you accomplish because you're insecure. So it's a balance between feeling confident and still maintaining humility when you're around other people. See, I'm freely able to talk to you about what I've done in the past because I'm trying to share with you what you could learn. But the more important part of this is when you're talking to people, understand that people naturally have a tendency to judge us. And the cockiness part comes in when you're not secure with the information, or you didn't prepare properly, or you actually don't feel good about yourself because of whatever reason that somebody planted in your brain, and you need those people as far away from your circle as possible, because those are the ones that actually will keep you from succeeding. Just like I have a brother that when I was growing up, he always felt insecure because what I've heard from how my dad's expectation was so high for this one particular brother I have, that that brother was always being commented what he can and cannot do, or he's not able to do, that he's a disappointment, he's being put down. All these comments that actually are negative, and put him to the point where his confidence actually appear more like an insecurity. And that's where you find where the cockiness comes in from. But when you're talking to your clients, what you have to understand, your clients will be more attuned or more closer to you when they feel like you're approachable. When they feel like your best interest is them in your heart. But more importantly, that you're not cocky or bragging or not making them feel like they're the most important people at the time that you're seeing them. So we don't pay attention to these things, but our business is, I would say, almost 80% psychology. When people tell me, like, how do you produce like consistent $250,000 to $500,000 a year without marketing? The answer is you, because you are your own marketing. People can buy houses without agents, and people can sell house without agents. And one thing I can tell you, when you're sitting down with a client, they need to feel confident that you will be able to get them from point A to point B. Any doubts, or even a little slight doubt that you may have, well, there's an agent in 1 every 5 doors that you knock on the door out there. And that's how competitive this market is. So they don't need agents. What they need is someone they can trust and someone they can like. Because you don't work with people you don't like, right? You work with people that you do like. And when you work with people that you do like, you need to know that they're confident in what they're doing, right? So this is very critical. And our confidence dates back from how we were raised as a child. A child that's been condemned since they're a little kid and they grow up to be adults, I guarantee you their self-esteem is this little, because that's how I looked like when I was actually 18, 19 years old. It was a difficult time for me because I never hardly saw my parents, and my brothers and sisters were always constantly telling me that I'm doing something wrong. Never heard all that like good thing, good job, or good praises that you actually hear from others. But what I did learn when I really got better in this business is that you can attain that and you can reprogram your mind. So I started reading books about how to gain confidence. It's kind of funny because sometimes when I'm actually wake up in the morning, I'm looking at myself, I love you, man. I love you. I say that to myself. You know why? Because you know why? Because if nobody will love you, please make sure you love yourself. Because if you cannot love yourself, don't expect others to love you. That's called self-esteem. You build up your self-esteem knowing the fact that your confidence. And when some people think that it's selfish to love yourself, no, there's nothing selfish about that. What becomes selfish is when you take something from others to please yourself. That's what selfish is. But when you're doing something for yourself to actually gain confidence by reading books or listening to audiobooks or to actually talk to people that are successful, there's nothing wrong with that. Because that's how you're going to gain the confidence that you may not have been raised with. Because all of us have our own backgrounds where we grew up. I grew up in the Philippines. My background is kind of very colorful in that sense, where I was in a gang at 8 years old and I didn't even know. I thought everything was a game and we were like doing crazy things, right? But at the end of the day, when I came to the United States, I realized, oh my goodness, all those things I was doing was not even legal, I guess. So then, I had to find my way and find my own moral compass. But more importantly is when you're feeling good about yourself, no matter what the circumstances. See, there's another thing that I want to mention to you. Sometimes we run into issues where we have our own personal problems. All of us have our own personal problems. You run into arguments with your spouse, or whoever it is. You actually run into someone betrayed you, a good friend betrays you. I mean, your parents, you never expected them to say something that they said, the whole drama, right? And that whole drama chips away in our confidence. You have to learn to be able to compartmentalize that, because otherwise it's hard to make a living doing what we do. Because remember, we sell us. We don't sell houses. We go in between transactions. Let me give you a good example. One morning I woke up and one of my friends who's a plastic surgeon calls me up. It's like, hey, Mark, I have a client who wants to write an offer on a property, no agent. Can you write it in the next 2 hours? $1.6 million house. I was like, sure. So wrote the contract. Right? I didn't sell the house. The reason why I was able to write that contract, because I already sold me to that friend. And that friend sold me to his friend. Right? And that friend actually ended up writing the offer with me. Someone pre-sold me already. Right? Why would this friend pre-sell me to the next person? Because he's confident that I can get the job done, number one, and I can properly represent his friend so he looks good. Number two, he was already my client from the past. No, never, don't know anything about that person. I literally just wrote an offer with a person actually, and I talked to the person. It's like, yeah, that's what I want. Okay, let's go ahead and get it done. You see? But I'm trying to explain to you where the confidence come from, right? It's the confidence I brought to that friend that already bought a house with me before. The fact that he knows he can look good to his friend by recommending me. So that's really a very good factor that you have to understand, that your confidence within yourself projects to others. So when we are raised a certain way where we're always been told no, believe me, at some point you got to figure out how to be able to build up that confidence to the level that people would want to be around you. If you ever gone to a party and you see a big crowd and you see certain crowds crowd into a certain people, what you will notice, that person is the life of the party, right? And the reason being is because they're confident about what they say and people pay attention. But if you're shy and you're like, kind of low self-esteem, where are you going to end up? You're going to end up in a seat somewhere in a corner. Nobody actually wants to talk to you. That's the difference between, remember, we're in the business of people. So you have to attract people in order for you to sell houses. That's the number one rule. The number two rule is you can make a client out of no client. It's the craziest thing. People always tell me, like, how do you do marketing? We mail out, we do mailers. But by the time you reach those people, you have competition because you're not the only one thinking this way. Try selling to someone who's not even thinking about selling, and you're the one who created that thought. That's selling. It's called influence. See, we influence people in this business. We don't sell. See, if you come in here as a salesperson, I've seen so many salespeople, top sales in a Sharper Image or whatever, the company that used to be around and no longer around. Top salesperson in Wyndham actually selling timeshares. They come into the real estate business, they don't go anywhere. Because that programming does not work in this business. The programming that you need in this business is what we call influence, not selling. People don't buy houses because you convince them to buy a house. You're not a car salesperson where you walk in and by the time you step out one step outside of the door, that car salesman's like in your face, like, no, we can get you a better deal. Let's come back and sit down and talk. This is not the kind of sale. Believe me, I will never make it alive in that kind of business, because that business to me is not who I am. What we sell is our genuinity, who we are, authenticity, our friendship, our closeness, our trust. And confidence is necessary to build trust. Because if you're not confident, how do you expect the person to be confident that you can get things done? Okay? So programming and reprogramming. You're programmed a certain way, you got to reprogram yourself. So recommendations of books that I would actually do, one of them is an old book that everybody's already know about. It's How to Win Friends and Influence People. This is a really good book to start with, because the way you communicate with people can exude confidence. And this is how you're going to find it, is through what others already written. I didn't create any of this stuff. I just actually express it out because I've read that book at least 15 times by now. And I'm talking about audiobook because I'm more an audiobook reader than a sit-down reading. Because to me, I don't have that luxury. I'm doing way too many things to be actually not multitasking. So I multitask most of the time. So that's why I don't have the luxury to sit down and just read a book. I mean, if I ever got to read a book, it's because I'm on vacation somewhere and my phone is gone, which happened to me when we went to Europe a couple months ago. I lost my phone. I'm like, okay, there's nothing else to do. Let me just start reading. So, but bottom line is, if you're going to want to gain your confidence, you need to start searching and searching on how to develop you as a better version. So that's why, to me, a lot of these trainings that you see is about skills. Skills you can pay per hour, guys. Skills you can pay per hour. But attitude, and a great one, and a good one that people would want to be around you, it's developed over time through personal development and understanding of psychology. So you need to know who you're dealing with, who you're talking to, how to be able to behave around people. It's very key to any successful real estate agent out there that's going to be a top producing agent. When you talk to someone who's very successful, one thing I can tell you, when you finish talking to them, 80% of the time, you'll get to like them. Because they've mastered that part that's necessary for you to succeed. And number two, you will always find that they're very confident of how they speak. See, it's not even what you say. It's the tonation of your voice when you speak to someone that can feel whether or not you know what you're talking about or you're guessing it. But the people that are so confident, even if they don't know what they're talking about, it makes it look like they're really, really expert in it. Because they mastered that part. It's the way you communicate with people. And what people don't understand also is we have certain age levels of maturity. You can meet an 80-year-old person that behaves like a teenager. You can meet a 30-year-old person that actually behaves like a 60-year-old wise person. It depends on how they educated themselves to the level of communication. So when I talk to people, I usually look at it and figure out what age they are. And based on their age, I talk to them in a certain posture to make sure that they feel that they're talking to someone that's confident. So I had a client that came in one time, true story. This client actually had one of my reception person quit. And my loan officer, quit completely the business. He had a license and he didn't want to work in the real estate business after dealing with this one client. And the other one quit on me, never want to do business with me because I'm dealing with this client. But what I came to realize is this client is a 9-year-old trapped in a 60-year-old body, okay? That never had a father. So I had to understand the psychology of what's going on in his head, why he behaves this way, and is a tyrant. The behavior is a tyrant. It's interesting because there's a book called King, 4 Archetypes of a Man. It was recommended to me by a psychologist. 4 Archetypes of a Man. And this person actually fell on a tyrant where he was a messed up king, essentially. A king knows balance to maintain his power. A tyrant eventually falls in most cases. If you look at history, that's basically what happened. But he behaves like a tyrant. And when I figured out he was about 9 years old, I start talking to him like a 9-year-old. Like I'm talking to a 9-year-old kid. So when he actually steps out of line, I tell him, I have no problem telling him, hey, listen, I don't appreciate what you just said. Like a 9-year-old child. And guess what? To this day, he looks like me like a father. He calls me up. It's like, hey, Mark, what do you think of this swimming pool? I just did this. Da, 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 da. Will it help me with my value? Hey, Mark, I just had 2 kids. Can you actually proxy as a godfather to my children? True story. Okay. But that comes with the confidence because I know exactly what I'm dealing with. Because when you don't know what you're dealing with, you're not confident. It's natural, right? It's natural you won't be confident on areas where you're not familiar. So if you're going to do one thing in this business, okay, focus on how psychology works. What type of people you're dealing with. There's 5 big personality types out there. And I'm going to go through this real quick so then, we can kind of move on to the subject. But I want to kind of give you guys an idea and you can research this. You got the extroversion, you have the agreeableness, you have the conscientiousness, you have the imaginative, okay? And there's one more. I can't think about it right now. But essentially, you need all 5 to figure out which one has this. All of us have all 5. The only question, which one is the strongest? And when you figure that out, basically, you're talking to a person, and if the person actually falls into an introvert and you're yelling and screaming at that person, or you're very aggressive to that person just turns off. Because our natural ability to interact with people is about understanding this whole mirroring idea. So when you're talking to a person who's normally very shy and quiet, even though with my personality, I have to mimic that in order for me to actually get them to like me. Because at the end of the day, if you can get 80 or 90% of the people you meet get to like you and trust you, you'll be selling a lot of houses, I can guarantee you. Because the only elements that you're going to need now at that point is to input ideas, create the vision. Your job in real estate is to sell the dream. So when you meet somebody who owns a house, there's 2 choices, right? You can either sell them a dream of upgrading the home or sell them the dream of becoming an investor. I like the investor part, to be honest with you, because it's a recyclable, client. I mean, I have a client that's constantly buying properties for me when I have a good property that I pick up, because he's my friend that I've known for 11 years. So every year he buys like 2-3 houses from me. He bought already over 300 houses in the past 10, 11 years. Not all with me, but hey, I don't mind getting 2 or 3 every year. That adds up to something, right? So either you sell the upgrade or sell them the idea of becoming an investor. When I say sell, by the way, it's subtle, okay? It's more influence than selling. Because you don't tell them, you just tell them stories to get them excited about it and get them to think. And then later on, they call you up like, hey, I got a good idea, I want to be an investor. Like, okay, sure. I already know the call's going to come in 3-4 months later that they're going to actually tell me that they want to buy or sell a house or whatever, because I was the one who put that there. See, you can only reap when you actually plant, right? So if you don't plant anything in people's mind and create a vision of what can be, if somebody doesn't own a house yet, what I usually tell them is a story about a person that didn't own a house, owned the house, sold it to their landlord. 40 years later, they've been renting to the landlord, and the landlord finally wanted to sell it. It's worth $600,000, and they bought it for $30,000 in 1968. Sold it for like $60,000 in 1972, and it's worth $600,000 when they moved out, and they paid for that mortgage, not the landlord. They did. Can you imagine how painful that is to that couple? You see, I don't have to tell you that you should be buying a house. I can just tell you a couple stories, and then you start thinking about it like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be that person. You see the difference? That's the difference between selling if I have to tell you something and influencing when I tell you a story that influences your mind to want to take action. But that requires confidence for us to be able to tell it in a certain way that people will actually believe. Because if your tonation of voice is kind of, yeah, this is what happened. And nobody wants to be around you. And they're going to fall asleep half the time. No, you know what? I got to go. I got my appointment. Look, my phone just rang. All the excuses in the world will actually come up after that. So why do we need confidence in our real estate career? Is because we need to be able to express ourselves in such a way that people believe us.